Hey everybody, in this video we're going to take a look at another short Latin story. Now this one is called The Magic Ring, and it comes from George L. Bennett's Easy Latin Stories for Beginners from the late 1800s. Now like I always tell you in these videos, I like to use these in my class, usually with my Latin 2 students, sometimes 3 depending on sort of which story we pick. But what Bennett is calling easy Latin stories are not necessarily easy, and they're also not necessarily for beginners. It kind of depends on where you are. I'd usually say that if you're following a traditional textbook, some of the major ones you see, this will probably be something you won't see until those intermediate years, just because Bennett uses some more advanced grammar that you just might not see if you really are in a Latin 1 class, for instance, or even a middle school Latin class. So keep that in mind. If you're a student, I recommend you pre-read it. If you're seeing things that you just have no idea what's going on, maybe you just wait, or talk to your teacher and try to figure out when this would be a good time to read this. But if you are sort of in that intermediate range, somewhere in that Latin 2 or 3 range, you'd probably be okay with reading these. And they're a good way to break free from normal textbook or curriculum and just read things you would not otherwise see, right? So a lot of times Bennett is doing some history. Sometimes he's doing things with a moral or short anecdotes, and this one just happens to be something that has to do with philosophy. So it gives you a nice kind of range in what's in Bennett. And again, it's just a chance to break free and try something different, right? Maybe learn something new. So this particular video is about a Lydian king, Gyges, right? Gyges, who is a famous king in Herodotus's histories, okay? But this particular version of the story is actually coming from Plato's Republic, which is why it has that philosophical element. So you can see him in Herodotus, but I believe Bennett is actually taking this version of it from Plato's Republic. And it's focusing on how Gyges becomes a king through the finding of this magic ring. So it's really got this strong sort of Lord of the Rings and Hobbit vibes to it, which makes it a really fun story, right? And a great thing to read. So before we dive into it, like I always tell you in these videos, the first thing I'll do is read the story to you just so you can hear it. Not that my pronunciation is ever anything special, but it at least gives you a chance if you want to know what it sounds like just from someone else. You can listen to me, but I'd always encourage you to do a little pre-reading on this, right? So make a vocab list. That's always a good bet. So any words you don't know, just on first glance, write them down and look them up. That way you at least know what the words mean, because it's really hard to translate and read without having that strong core of vocab. And I don't think there's any vocab list for Bennett. That would be pretty surprising, but you can make one on your own, right? It's not that bad to do. The other thing I'd recommend you do is read it aloud, right? So you try reading it, work on your speaking, your pronunciation, particularly if you're a student, you can find a classmate. That's always a good bet. And then have that person, if you're partnered up, have them read it back to you. That way you can work on your listening skills too, right? And hear the story coming at you. Those are great ways to understand Latin. You never want to shut those off and just translate in your head. That would be not an ideal situation, right? You don't want to learn Latin and never actually speak it. So speak it, try it out. You'll never get better until you practice it. So like I said, I'll give you my version of it, and then you should work on your own. The last thing I'd always encourage you to do is, if you're trying to really understand and nail this, try the read and reread method. So read through it once, mark any problem areas you're having, then go back and read it again right after you fix those problem areas. Just keep rereading it, and your list of problems should get shorter and shorter until you're able to read through the whole story and you don't have to look anything up, right? That's always a good sign that shows you that you understood it. Okay, so if you haven't done that, pause the video. Otherwise, I'll read it to you right now, and then we'll start taking apart piece by piece. So the story goes like this. You have Giges olim quidam, hiante terra post magnos quostam imbres descendit in illum hiatum aeneumque equum conspexit. Okay. Then you have huius in lateribus fores errant. His apertis hominis mortui vidit corpus mira magnitudine annulum aureum indigito habentes. Annulum ipse induit erat autem servus regis, tum in concilium se servorum recepit. Ibi palam eius annuli in manum convertens a nulla videbator. Ipse autem omnia videbat. Idem annulum in locum restituit, tum rossus videbator. Itaque hac occasione annuli usus regem dominum interfecit, et inimico sustuit. Nec in his facinoribus eum quisquam videre potuit. Sic annuli ope rex Lydiae factus est. Okay, so let's pause the video there, right? If you want to listen to it again, go back. Again, my pronunciation is never anything particularly special, but feel free to use it, right? Just as a way to hear the story if you have no one to read it with you. But once you've done that, let's keep moving and we'll unpack it together. right? So it starts with the olim, right, which a lot of times you see meaning once upon a time, which I think makes it a fun way of doing the story. So once upon a time, why not? A certain Gyges, right, Gyges, who's this soon to be king. Okay, so then you have with the terra, right, with the earth split open, right, hiante terra. So with the earth having been split open after a magnos quostam imbres, right, after some great rains. So there's a big rainstorm or a bunch of rain, and the earth splits open. So Gyges, he descended into that opening or chasm, right? The hiatum, right? Ilum hiatum. So he goes into that like cave or opening in the earth. And he caught sight of conspexit, right? So he caught sight of an equum aeneum, right? So this bronze horse, which is a really weird part of the story, but he sees a bronze horse, right? According to Herodotus and Plato. Okay. Then you have huius in lateribus foris eran. So on the sides of it, the lateribus, right? Think like lateral, right? So on the sides of this horse, there were doors, right? So there's doors on the sides of it, and with these having been open, right? His apertis, he saw the corpus, right? The body of a dead man, hominis mortui, right? So he sees this dead body, right? Again, it's a very weird story in the beginning. And it's this dead man of miraculous size, mira magnitudine, using the ablative there, right? So of huge magnitude, miraculous magnitude, great size. So a lot of times you see in translations about this story, right? It's a giant, right? Is basically what he's looking at. And it's the body of this giant man, Habentis, right, having on his finger in digito a annulum aureum, a golden ring. So the dead body of the giant inside the bronze horse, right? Gyges opens it up and sees that there's a ring on it, right, on this dead body. Then you have annulum ipse induet, erat autem servus regis, right? So he himself, he put on the ring, right, induet annulum. And again, it has very strong sort of Lord of the Rings vibes to it. So he puts on the ring, right? For now, he was a servus regis. He was the slave of a king, right? So at this moment in time, he was just a slave. Okay. Then he brought himself back. So say recapit, right? He kind of returned or brought himself back to the concilium servorum, to the assembly of the slaves, right? So the group of slaves. So in other words, the slaves of the king, he goes back there and he has this golden ring. Okay. Then you have ibipalam, right? So there, openly. Convertens means like turning or turning over, right? Turning the annuli, right? The ring, right, turning into his hand, right, openly turning this ring in his hand. He videbator annulo. He was seen by nobody, right? So in other words, in some stories, the rock on the ring, if he turns it towards himself, I think is what it actually says in these stories. He goes invisible and sort of away from himself. He's visible. But either way, something about turning the ring and kind of keeping it on his hand makes him turn into go invisible, right? Very strong Frodo Baggins vibes here. So he goes invisible. Okay, and he's seen by nobody. Then you have ipse autem, right? However, videbat omnia, he himself, ipse, he was seeing everything. So in other words, people can't see him, but he can see them. Okay. Then you have restituit, right? So he restored the ring, idemanum, the same ring, into its place. So when he put it into its place, meaning like turns it around, basically. Then tum rorsos videbator. Then again he was seen. So in other words, it has to do with the movement and something about turning the ring, right? Either turns him invisible and he can see everybody even though they can't see him, and when he turns it back, now he's able to be seen. So he's kind of shifting in and out of this invisibility because of the magic golden ring he has. And again, it's sort of like twirling the stone around, I think is really what he's doing here. Then you have itaque hac occasione annulae usus regem dominum interfecit. So you have, and so by usus hac occasione, right, by using this opportunity of the ring, meaning the opportunity that like the ring provided of going invisible, he interfecit dominum, right, interfecit regem dominum. He killed the king, right, his master. So he killed his master, the king. So this is what he does with it, right? He does kind of horrible things with this magic ring. And et inimico sustulit, and he destroyed his enemies, right? So he takes his vengeance on everyone. Then you have nec in his facinoribus eum quisquam videre potuit, right? Nor was anyone, quisquam, nor was anyone able to see him. So eam videre potuit, it's just a complementary infinitive. So no one was able to see him in these crimes, in his facinorbis, meaning like doing these crimes. So because he has the magic ring, he's going around murdering people, and nobody has any idea it was him. Okay? Then you end with the line "Sic annuli, ope rex Lydiae factus est," right? So thus, by the power of the ring, right, the ope annuli, he was made factus est, the king of Lydia, right? And presumably he, went on to try to conquer Middle Earth, right? It has very strong Lord of the Rings vibes to it, but it's a fun story, right? It's definitely a fun story. It's one that I wasn't familiar with until I read through Bennett, but looking it up, I can see exactly why people would know this. And there's a lot of really good resources on it. I would never pretend to be big into philosophy. It's not particularly my thing, even though as a Latin teacher, we touch on it a lot. But I would definitely recommend that if you're into this sort of Greek philosophy or anything like that, you can find a lot of good resources about Plato's Republic, his discussion on the allegory of the ring that you can see here. The one that I'm putting a picture of here is a TED Ed talk that I thought did a pretty good job of going over what that is all about in about 5 minutes, which is nice. But basically, the Plato's Republic is talking about whether men act justly because it's right or because of the idea of like punishment and reward. And it has this idea of like, could anyone resist sort of the corruption of a magic ring like this? So it's a good video. And again, listen to someone much more knowledgeable than me. I'd never be able to guide you in the right direction on philosophy, but have some fun with it. If it's something that you're curious about, go look it up and kind of understand what sort of philosophical exercise this is getting at. But on its own, it's just a fun story, right? Like I said, it's a fun way to break free of a traditional curriculum or textbook and just read something different. Okay. If you have any questions at all, feel free to put them in the comments below. Anything on my translation or anything like that, put them down there. I'll be happy to help you. Otherwise, just keep at it, keep practicing, right? Read it on your own, use it as a chance to work on all your skills in Latin, and hopefully have some fun with it. Good luck.